What's going on, YouTube? Finally making an update on the fuel lines, or my fuel system, I should say. I basically pretty much finished running all my lines. The only thing I'll have to end up doing is just going through after the car's more complete to just run through them and make sure that they're all tight. And this is the Aeromotive fuel pressure regulator. My buddy has this exact same one, and he really likes it. This one's also compatible with E85, which if I ever wanted to, which I don't have any plans to run E85 because I want to stick to gasoline, but this will be the line going to the carbs. This is the return line. This is the feed line. And I have one Russell filter right here before it comes up to the pressure regulator. And then I tuck the lines up into this body mount, which this would be for the inner fenders, which I'm not planning on running inner fender wells, but I figured I'd just keep that rather than just cutting it off, and I can use this to help keep these stable and tucked in as much as possible, in which I ended up throwing one clamp on this anyways, just to kind of help out a little bit. And then I have one separator right here, and I have another one right here. I don't know if you can see that. And then I have a clamp right here on the frame, which it is really tight. There's very little to no movement, which is nice. And I got it tucked in as close as possible to the frame and body. And I have another one here, one right above the cross member, and then another one just before it goes behind the frame boxing that I did. And there's also another clamp right there, if you can see it, just before the frame boxing to also help keep it as tight as possible, at least from where I can see it. And then I'll show you underneath. Underneath the car, this is basically how I have it set up. Not that it's perfect, or it probably could be a little bit better even maybe, but I thought this was probably the best way I could do it. Both the lines, which this hole on the frame right here, I ended up wallowing it out a lot more, because this was where I was going to have the fuel lines running into the frame, so it'd be easier. Especially, it was definitely a lot easier to feed the lines in there, into the frame, and down the rest of the way. And then I have one separator here just to kind of help tie the return line. And then this would be the feed line going into my fuel pump, which is the MagnaFuel ProStar 500, I think it is, which on another video that I had, I talked more about this pump, but this pump, it may be overkill for this motor that I'll end up, or for the 489 big block that I'll be putting back in it after I freshen up the motor anyways and do a couple things to it, but I bought this with the intent for looking towards the future. This pump, they say, is supposed to be able to handle, I think it was 2,000 horsepower, naturally aspirated, and I think it was 1,200 horsepower on E85 or boosted applications. Which, as far as my plans, I don't plan on throwing boosts at the 489 But the next motor, I don't know. I would love to buy a supercharger for the next motor I build, but that'll be another thing in itself, because the next motor is probably going to cost me a lot more money itself alone anyways. So, but like I said, this fuel pump I bought for future, and it should be more than enough for the 489. And then if I ever needed to, I can always send this pump back to MagnaFuel and have them rebuild it if I ever needed to, which is also nice. And then I have one Russell fuel filter before it even goes into the fuel pump. And I can't remember exactly. I think both the fuel filters, I think one was 100 micron, and then I think the one up front is a 40 micron. I can't remember. I ended up looking it up or whatever on the MagnaFuel fuel pump on what they suggested. I'd have to look that up again, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Which I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But and then this is where I also threw in a shut-off valve if I ever needed to either pull the fuel pump or something like that. If I had a problem with this, or if I had to remove the fuel cell out of the car, that I can shut off the fuel and I wouldn't have to necessarily drain out the entire fuel cell just to either change the fuel filter or mess with the fuel pump or anything like that. Which my buddy Daryl, he did the same thing, in which I think he had more than one shut-off valve, if I remember right. But I just went with the one for now, which I thought that one should be good enough, being that this was the feed line. And then if you look right, if I can show it, this is the line that comes from the front. This is the return line, in which I have this going into bulkhead fittings, which that's what's in both of these, which this is just a mini breather filter that I just bought off eBay with a clamp, and then it just has a 8AN hose barb fitting on it. And then that's also just a bulkhead fitting. And then up top, this is for the rollover vent, which I've seen other people's and my buddy Daryl's. I mean, a lot of stuff I'm doing, I stare at his car a lot, so I have a good mindset on which route I should probably go, in which he only looped it once. But then I figured maybe it'll give me just a little bit more if I looped it twice, that maybe it'll give it just a little bit more line that it has to loop over and before it starts going out or spilling over, if in which the car ever rolls over, which I hope that never happens. I have a couple separators on here too. I have them placed pretty good. I just need to buy a couple more so I can put one right here. And you see how that sags? I'm going to put one right here just so it stays firm and steady. And that way it gives me enough clearance away from the fuel cell. Just so it's not sitting on it and, rubbing, when you're going down the road or the track. And then this is the return line, which both of these on both sides over here, again, these are the bulkhead fittings that I have going to another AN fitting, and then coming up to the fuel cell. And then I also, I tallied up which I'll go through and tell you guys all the fittings and whatnot, because that way you guys got a pretty good idea. I ended up writing most of my stuff down, and this is what I basically had. I bought a sump pump kit 3, in which it came in black, so it came in this black anodized color, in which the sump pump kit 3, I bought an extra 15 feet of 8AN braided line, just in case, if I needed extra, or for whatever reason, which I ended up having plenty of AN line left over. So eventually, once I get, you know, the motor and everything else in, that I can run more line from here all the way up into the carbs. And then I also bought, these are basically all the fittings that I used on the car. I ended up buying more filters, but it's basically a jigsaw puzzle, pretty much, on just how you want it all ran. Because from here, you're using, like this one here is a 90-degree 3/4 inch NPT to an 8AN fitting. And then like these here, those are just adapters. It's just like this here. It's two, can't remember. I think these are 2 female ends that they can go into. And then that's going into the Russell fuel filter, and then just a straight AN fitting. And then this one here, again, these are the 3¼ inch NPT to a 8AN fuel fitting, and then this is just a straight fitting. Again, I just put this one on here. I'll end up using that when I run it to the carburetor. And then going all the way down, I ended up basically up here. I ended up both down here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not, but the AN fittings that I used for down here off of the bulkheads, they're all 4 45-degree 8AN fittings. And then I have 2 45-degree bulkhead fittings. And then down here, again, like I said, it's just a jigsaw puzzle, basically. You know, you cap this one off because I'm not going to be needing it. So that's just a cap. That's a straight fitting going into another straight fitting into the shutoff valve. And then this is just another, except it's a 45-degree adapter fitting into a Russell fuel filter to another adapter. And then I had to buy 12AN, because that's what this MagnaFuel pump, that's what the inlet and outlet is on this MagnaFuel pump. They're 12AN size fittings for 12AN line, which are freaking huge. But so I needed a 12AN to an 8AN reducer fitting on both ends. And then also another straight fitting. And then, like I said up top, it's just the breather. And then I used 190-degree fitting here. And then the bulkhead fittings, like I said, you can look them up. All I did was just drill a hole, and then using the bulkhead fittings, which it has a nut, so you can basically clamp it down to a panel, and then run your fittings on either side off of that. And then, like I said, I added up the total for everything that I bought as far as just fittings. And I mean, just like the sump pump kit 3, like I have everything written down. Sump pump kit 3 extra line, 6 straight AN fittings, the NPT fittings, the adapter fittings, 1 plug, the mini filter, the 45-degree female to female adapter, the reducers, all this stuff. The total ended up being, I think the total ended up being somewhere around like $420, and that's not including the Aeromotive, the fuel pressure regulator, or the MagnaFuel fuel pump, or the fuel cell. Which most of the fittings that I got, other than the Summit Racing, the Sump Pump Kit 3 and the extra line, I bought those from Summit. Everything else I bought from or off of eBay. Because if you look on Summit or Jegs or anything like that, all the fittings for all this stuff, all these fittings, they get expensive fast. Because, on there, one of these fittings would be like $20 or $25 just for one. Whereas on eBay, you can probably buy 2, like these 90-degree ones. I think I bought them off eBay for like, I don't know, I want to say like $18 or something like that. You just have to look it up. There's a bunch of different kinds. But then, which these are 6 AN separators. I also added then the separators into my total too. Which I still have to buy a couple of them to finish off the rollover vent lines. But other than that, that's it. The only thing I can say is take your time. Try not to rush. Figure out how you want to have it laid out, which angles you want to run them at, because I ended up waiting. I was just going to run either like a 90-degree fittings on the top of the fuel cell and then run just a straight fitting. But the way because I put the bulkheads right here and this panel right here over the rear end hump is at like a 45-degree angle, and I bought 45-degree bulkhead fittings, so it came up this way, but I didn't know how I could loop it around. But I figured just this, a 45-degree angle, it would kick it straight over this way and make it at least look better, I guess. But that's how I did it. And this fuel system, it's all 8 AN fuel line. So it should suffice for a good long while for what I'll end up doing.
Hold on for a second. If words can be weapons, then what I say can affect it. They're not just words on a record, and I can choose to respect it or choose to infect it. But once it hits the water, it's too late to be selective. Cause one voice is enough to make sleeping giants wake up, to make armies put their hands up and watch whole nations stand up. It's one belief, one spark, one faith and one restart, and we can reboot the whole chart before it all falls apart. So stand up, shout it out, and put them in the air if you like it loud. We only got one shot, so let's make it count. It's a takedown, nobody can stop us now. Stand up, shout it out, sing it loud so the world can't drown us out. And before we depart, let's leave a mark, cause light shines brighter in the dark.